Hi and welcome to our panel, What do cars, clothes, wardrobes and MRI machines have in common? We'll be talking about what it takes for large enterprises to adapt and thrive with modern developer portals like Backstage. My name is Remi, and I'll be your moderator today. I'm a software engineer at H&M Group, and I'm thrilled to guide this discussion with 4 amazing panels from 4 different companies. So let's meet our panelists, and I will let them introduce themselves. Please share your name, role, company, and anything you would like to share before you start.
I can start. My name is Magnusson. I work at Ikea, trying desperately there to treat our various developer supporting tools as a kind of DevX experience, sort of product, rather than a set of tools that we just dump on our innocent developers at Ikea. I've been there for 5 years today, doing these things there, but I've been working in various companies trying to accomplish similar things for the last 27 years now. Scary, but there you are. Tina?
That's even more scary. I've done 30 years with software development. My name is Tina Vincent. I work as engineer manager at H&M. I fell in love with Backstage when I joined. My first job as a manager, actually, after being a software developer, I was at Spotify, and it helped me immensely every day. So imagine how happy I was when I was at H&M and discovered we had Backstage, and then I opened it and it was empty. I was like, damn, this is going to be hard. So when asked to run the product and the adoption at H&M, I said that's a good challenge. And I think we share a similar challenge of the landscape being incredibly defragmented. When it comes to think about Windows 95, the defragmentation tool, and I think about the landscape that we have, information is all over, tools are all over, products are all over, code is all over. Whatever you start to build, someone else is building the same thing at the same time or build it 5 years before, and you can't find it. So I hope you're all going to have some questions for us after the panel as well. There's going to be a microphone in the middle. And there's the Menti where you can post questions as well. And I'm leaving it over to Martin.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Martin, and I work as a product manager at Volvo Cars in our internal developer platform team. Volvo Cars is a soon 100-year-old car manufacturer based out of Sweden. And I've been trying to help developers at Volvo Cars for soon 7 years. And looking forward to this panel. Scott.
Hi, my name's Scott Guymer. I'm a principal engineer at Philips. My focus is on improving the developer experience for our about 6,000 developers across the world. We work on products that have software in them, everything from toothbrushes to shavers to MRI machines and ultrasound scanners. So really, really diverse products, and trying to fix the developer process and developer experience across all those different things is really challenging.
Thank you all so much. Now, let me explain how we will run today's panel. So first, we will have 15-minute core discussion diving into key topics. And after that, we will open up for a 10-minute Q&A session where we will take your questions. You can post your questions on Menti or come to the center at the microphone. So we would love to hear which topics you are interested in the most. Please enter your code again. And go to menti.com and type 68036079 and let us know which topics you would like to hear today from these 4. One is business case for developer portal. Second, how to build trust. The third, impact and success stories. And the fourth, the future. I'll wait a little bit. Right. I guess we can do business case for developer portals and impacts and success stories. So let's start with the business case for developer portals, and then we go to impact and success stories later. So let's talk about why organizations decide to adopt a developer portal like Backstage in the first place. So, Martin,
Yeah, I can start.
what was the main driver for adopting Backstage in your organization?
So we had a very fragmented IT landscape and a platform that was largely ticket-based and quite low automation. And we knew what that looked like from an end user perspective, and that we needed to automate the platform and create something that we could call an actual end user experience end to end, which we didn't have. So it was very silo-based and time-consuming and frustrating, both for the platform teams and the end users. And there was Backstage, and just looking at the core features of Backstage, solving many of our pain points out of the box made us look at that and realizing that, like, this is not something we have to invent or reinvent that solution. It will be hard enough to implement and drive that adoption. So that was a main driver, like a siloed ticket-based platform and a high need for automation and end user experience.
Nice. I can see you're nodding, Jan. What about you?
I would say it's a lot of similar things. We had a lot of ticket-driven procedures and processes and a very fragmented landscape. And we didn't really set out to implement Backstage or really a developer portal. We just wanted to just start to cut down on the most obnoxious ticket-driven workflows. And we basically found Backstage already did some of the things that we felt, okay, these are the things that we need to implement. So we didn't really say anything about Backstage. It was just, this is the new thing that you can use to avoid all the ticket-driven procedures. And only after a while, people realized that we actually had Backstage there and we can use it for other things as well. So we didn't really build a Backstage business case. We built a business case for sort of demoting some of the most obnoxious procedures.
Did anyone need to convince your manager or people in your organization to start using Backstage? What about you, Tina?
So you gave me the hardest question. See, I hire the most complicated people. I wasn't there at the time, so we inherited it. So the way that we started with H&M, it was a top-down initiative. So we already had an internal developer portal that was only text-driven. Those were also Markdown files living in Azure DevOps and contributor-based. So we had guidelines and guardrails on how to create things the right way, because it was part of the cloud journey at H&M to move everything, the assets and the knowledge over. So actually it was sold to someone before me because of the sound checks, more or less. So we started at that end, relating back to Stan's talk, actually. So we didn't get the catalog content in until later, starting with sound checks, and then also starting with some really, really powerful templates early on, because it was complicated to create stuff in the cloud the right way over so many tools. So following a written documentation on that also took ages, because you had to reach out everywhere with the ticket systems. So the instructions were complicated, the flows were, well, they didn't always flow, the lead times were huge, and a lot of things went wrong. So the templating thing was what sold it to our management, I think, sound checks and templating, and still the most used assets in Backstage, actually.
What about you, Scott?
Yeah, we didn't start with a business case. We just started. It was kind of a grassroots project that came of our the creation of our inner source environment within Philips. And what's really great about that now is that we're being asked to create business cases, and we actually have the data from our Backstage instance to back up those business cases. So we're being asked to justify kind of why we should continue investing in our developer portal, and we actually have, you know, data to say, here we've saved hundreds of thousands of euros by using the scaffolder and by using the automations and the templates in there. So we kind of came the wrong way about it, but we actually are able to better justify, because we've started with the principle of building our application and making sure that we capture the metrics and the monitoring out of the usage that we were growing. So even though we came the wrong way about it, we now have a really strong base to justify it to all of our leadership, why we should continue investing in our developer portal and why it actually is generating value for the business.
Nice. But did the fact that the software itself is not the main product of your business make it harder to introduce Backstage?
Definitely. So Philips is, you may not know this, but Philips is a medical technology company now. We don't make light bulbs or televisions anymore. We make high-tech medical equipment and personal health products. And it's an incredibly regulated environment. So we have to adhere to a lot of regulations in all of the products that we produce. So it makes it really difficult to bring in new tools. They have to meet quite a high bar and quite a high standard internally, and provide something that we can use to meet those regulatory standards. We haven't had to make that many adaptations to Backstage because it's a supporting tool, but it's definitely on our roadmap to see how we can use Backstage to support our need for regulatory process in the way that we create our products.
Nice. What about you, Jan?
I'm not sure if it mattered much or not. I have not really much to compare with, but I can say as much as IKEA deal a lot with sort of physical stuff, things that you can touch, and that means we have a lot of touch points for the software with the people working with stuff, and the logistics chains and so on is quite complicated, and that means that we have also very, very diverse sort of software stacks. I would say multiple. We have anything you can think of, we have it, and probably more than once, and it's getting quite complicated. It's a quite complicated thing to even integrate into something like Backstage. It's a lot of work, yeah. And it's not just one software product. It's like anything that you can imagine, from embedded up to web pages.
We have the same problem with diversity, because we make everything from embedded software for toothbrushes to electronic medical record software. The diversity in our software is huge. We don't host microservices for toothbrushes. It's completely different, and some of our products do have microservices and things in the cloud and things like that. So the diversity at Philips is also a problem as well.
Anything would like to add, anyone? Yeah?
So I don't think we did any adaptations to being a logistic company manufacturing and selling clothes. But given that IT is not core business, is at the best given days, somebody can say, so IT supports, right? And it's empower, which means we buy a lot of products, we buy a lot of tools. We don't develop a lot, even though we have 3,000 engineers, which means that we also have this diversity of stuff in tech all over the place, which even more calls for having the layer, somebody mentioned the single pane of glass, because if we can aggregate that information in one place, it becomes even more obvious why the tech strategy really needs to be executed on to unify the products. And we can provide that layer because we can connect to most of the tools that are being used within the house, because we can't really solve it. We don't really work with integrations per se, but we do work with visualizing this, the stuff that we own in one place, which is needed, because you can't find the stuff that the other 4 people created somewhere. You need to find the person who knows the person who heard about it in ancient times sometimes.
I can just add too, I don't know, I don't think the problem that we're having, like a fragmented IT landscape and a siloed platform and ticket-based, is unique to larger enterprises, but one complication with it is that there are so many use cases to solve due to the variety of things that we develop. So where to start might have been taking a little bit longer time to choose from. And as you start and build something out and gain some kind of traction, you have to sort of navigate the roadmap and vision to meet the use cases that you haven't started really optimizing for yet. So maybe that's a complicating factor.
Can I add on that? Because when you and I first met in the Backstage Club, I asked, because we were early on our adoption journey, and Volvo was long way before us, right? And I asked you, how do you make it successful? And you went like, yeah, find the hardest problem that people are experiencing. And we didn't really think about that until now. But then, you know what? We were looking into how can we provide engineer metrics? How can we provide actions that you can roll forward, pull a pod in or out, or view your logs or whatever. But then I realized after a while, the hugest problem our engineers are facing is that they can't even find the information. So I was a bit stoked because I really want to build more technical workflows, right? But people don't even find this stuff. So we also, like, in a way, just need the discoverability for engineers to be at a higher level. Because when we do research, we can see engineers spending too much time on information hunting, cognitive load switching between tools, and we can mitigate for parts of that as well. So even though I want to build engineering dashboards, I get myself caught in discoverability a lot of the time, actually.
Thank you very much. Shall we move on to the next topic? Yeah, which is impact and success stories. So once the developer portal is in place, how do we measure its success? Let's talk about real-world impact. So Scott, how has Backstage improved the developer experience in your organization?
So when you come from that ticket-based kind of fire and forget way of working, the impact becomes immediate when a developer can go to Backstage, put in a few basic details and get something instantly. And they're so amazed that this is possible, especially in Philips. It's really quite impressive that. So one of the things that we actually automated was the creation of projects in SonarQube. Sounds like something really simple and trivial, but what the expectation was set that you would have to open a ticket and wait hours, days, however long for your project to be created, and you would always move on with some other work and do something else. But now the developer who wants that project to be able to improve the quality of their code can just go to Backstage, type in their repository name, press OK, and it's created within seconds. And so they can then continue and really get the value out of using a tool like SonarQube to get the quality feedback straight away without having to wait, or without even having to forget about how that works in the future. So just showing that the business that it's possible to go from a kind of ticket ops, fire and forget, to an immediate feedback, keep me in my flow, keep me working, and be able to get immediate value has really been a great impact across Philips from our developer portal.
Nice. How is Backstage helping you, John?
Yeah, I can say something about the procedures that we set out to automate. I looked before I went here at the number of hours I would estimate that we have saved just from those automating those initial obnoxious procedures, and I came to a minimum of 50,000 hours of waiting time that we have eliminated just from those things. And since then we have also so many other things. Basically all of our internal sort of tech platforms you can now find. You can find information about them. You can find who owns them. You can onboard yourself. We have also all our internal APIs, or at least most of them, discoverable. You can onboard yourself to use our internal APIs and so on. And we save a lot of time by making those not only easy to find, but also easy to consume.
Someone mentioned creating baselines and finding the hardest problems. So we have done interviews and surveys and really tried to ask our end users, what are your pain points, even though we know them quite well because we've been listening to their complaints for many years. But one such thing where we really see an impact is like spinning up a service, add a DB, and get that up to working state, which we measured and tried, which was from 2 to 3 weeks, typically. Sounds crazy, but it's true. And through automation and Backstage, we're under an hour now. We're pushing it to get like slower and faster and faster, not slower and slower. Yeah, so that's really impact. So that's finding a baseline and seeing that impact is amazing. And just figuring out the automation that you need. Like your service, you're adding a DB, you probably need a firewall, you need secrets automation. That takes time in a very, very siloed and meeting-based structure. So.
Yeah, meeting-based structure. Whoever optimizes for that.
Weird word. Tickets following meetings, tickets.
Yeah. Lead times cost, right? Because you all know what you do when you wait. You start more projects and more tickets. And then when they all return at the same point, you basically implode, right? So one thing that we did early on the metrics part is the software templates to create code on the cloud infra. So we have one for each language, more or less, front end and back end, which puts all the right security things in place as well. And that flow, so I actually thought we were the worst, right? But for us, it took anything from 1 to 2 months to get the first code out on the proper infrastructure with the proper security in place. So those templates are you don't have to wait for anything. It takes you max 5 minutes now. So if we count that really low, that's 100,000 euro per run. And that's a really low count, though, because it also encourages people to actually focus on other tasks than setting all of this up. We also have another calculation on what if we can save people 5 minutes per week. That's 1 million Swedish crowns, well, 100,000 euros per month as well, right? By just 5 minutes in spending time, but then also reducing the cognitive load of having to switch back and forth, firing away 5 different flows in parallel. When we have this huge cybersecurity rollout, where we have to be compliant in a lot of, the checklists are endless. And we have to call to meetings even to understand the checklist, because even the people who wrote the checklist can't really teach us well, because it's complicated. And it seems like the people who did onboard with the templates we have, they could just say, so we use the template, so we're done with the checklist. And that was the immense relief for those people as well.
Great to hear all the impacts. Was there any unexpected impacts that you saw? What about you, Scott?
So we started out working with the catalog. So we thought that the most impactful thing that we could do would be to catalog all of our software and components across Philips. And that's where we started, and what we found was that the scaffolder turned out to be the most impactful tool, because where we've got to now is, I checked the other day, we've run about 30,000 invocations of the scaffolder templates across all of the different templates that we've got, and we don't really know how to estimate how much time that's saved us, but we're into tens of thousands of hours in execution time, and probably an order of magnitude more in waiting time as well. So that's been a really kind of unexpected impact of using Backstage, because we started off with a really different vision, and we're now in a place where we're using the scaffolder to make the best practice the easy practice, and it's saving us so much time and energy and making developers happier as well.
Yeah, one thing that I didn't see coming really, because my predecessor, he really drove adoption hard. He found the best stakeholders in the house and brought them together. And I'm not the PM, right? I'm used to be engineer, and now I'm suddenly a manager. And I don't want to push things onto people. I don't want to tell them, you have to do this, you have to do this. I want that to be something that benefits their own use case. So I haven't been doing my product manager rounds as I probably should. And then we did this event in December. We just shared stories from contributors and their success stories. We did a Menti before. Do you remember that one? It's about how hard is it to adopt Backstage and how useful. You know, the 4-field kind of thing. And before we did the talk of 1 hour, everybody was like, oh, it's not useful, it's super hard. And then we did the same survey afterward. Everybody, it's easy, it's useful. And after that, we saw the huge, everybody started to reach out to us. So right now we're supporting 17 initiatives in the same point, because I thought H&M I was told that everybody's so tired, there was this reorg, it's just another tool. So I was kind of humble when I came in with it. I said, okay, you have a use case, can we help you? Can we sit down and pair program with you? Can we come to your hackathon or whatnot? And I was surprised how many people actually put their hope onto Backstage, because it's also people are starting to do more cross-team collaboration, and engineers are starting to, we kind of like to work with other engineers, right? And that was a side effect that I didn't see, because we were in a bit reorg fatigue. And people are excited in a way that I didn't see coming, actually, that they can contribute. We say, this is a playground. We won't stop you. Just come to us and share. How can we help?
Like, one thing I found, I don't know if it was unexpected, but a little bit, is the Backstage's popularity. When we started adopting Backstage, it was kind of unexpected how hard of a sell it was internally in places. Looking at the product, the potential that it has, and the amount of conversations it started internally in, trying to really sell it internally. That was a bit unexpected. The positive side of that is that it drove the right conversation because of its transformational nature as a product. So a bit unexpected, but it's positive because it really brings, from an internal platform perspective, it brings platform as a product thinking together. But it was a little bit unexpected how much a sell it was internally.
For me, another really unexpected thing from Backstage was how flexible it was and how many possible targets that you had. You kind of, within a company the size of Philips, it was like shooting an arrow into the woods. You were going to hit a tree, no matter where you aimed. And there were so many opportunities, it became so difficult to choose where to start and what to do. And every time you spoke to someone different, there was some different opinion on what was the best thing for them. So you kind of came in less of an engineer and more of a counselor for some of these teams to try and help them figure out what's the best thing that they can do, and how can Backstage help them solve their problems. Because it's so flexible, there was opportunities absolutely everywhere.
If I can say something about what I've found unexpected, both how useful I think Backstage has been for us, but also how hard it has been to get more of the organization to adopt it. Now we have, in addition to the core team, we have about 120 contributors to the portal, but it was a hard sell in a way that surprised me in the beginning, to explain to people how making things easier actually saves a lot of money, because it's not really about the effort that you put into doing all these sort of tickets and everything. It's mostly about the waiting time and just the interruptions that it generates for so many people. But it was difficult in an organization used to work like that, to explain that to more and more people. It was a bit like counseling, like you said, Scott.
Why should I invest my time in building this plugin?
Yeah.
Thank you for a great discussion. Now shall we move on to the Q&A? So we have this question. If you started over tomorrow, what would you do differently? Anyone?
Because we're doing it right now. We're rebuilding it, setting it up from scratch. Make sure that you have a stable foundation that's scalable and maintainable, so you don't get caught up doing the wrong kind of maintenance. We spend too many weeks on that right now. So that's one thing. I would also do, Martin's suggestion, start with some research. What is the hardest problem? Because as you say, the arrow and tree thing, you're going to find a lot of them. So what's the main one to focus on as early as possible? Because then you can baseline, and then you can show, people want metrics.
Yeah, this is a tough one, but make sure you have at least a small team and a skilled team to take it on, but and don't estimate fundamentals like access, identity, running the thing. And I would also look earlier and harder on, like, what does our ownership model look like before we bring this on? Is it death by 1,000 intra groups or whatever groups you have? What does that look like, and how would you want it to look like when you center things like automation around software catalog? Because finding that space is really at the center of it. And yeah, ownership. I would look at those fundamentals, would be my tip. Also, end users are really important, of course. But as Stanley talked about, how do we get it to scale? How can we make contributions easy? Would start earlier on that. Yes.
I can say it's the same thing. Ownership, like you said, and more effort into the catalog, the taxonomy, and the procedures around, say, owning something in the catalog. We have been suffering more from not having done that groundwork well enough from the beginning. And that's where we are going next. That's sort of the future for us to really start to dig into those things.
Yeah, for me, it would be having an opinion on how people structured their catalog. I started off with the idea that I don't need to have an opinion what domains and systems people want to create, and that's created a bit of a several different ways of doing things, and there's no kind of consistency. So if I started over again, I would have more of an opinion on how to set that stuff up.
Let's move on to the second question. How do you balance between allowing people to bring content and having sufficient controls to avoid Backstage becoming a dumping ground? Jan?
Yeah, I can start. We're having a core team whose main job is become more and more to exactly do this. They don't develop as much any longer as they did in the beginning. It's more about making sure that the contributions are coming in are sort of have the right quality, that we can monitor them, that we can roll back things if things go wrong, that they look like the rest of the things that we have in the portal and don't really sort of hurt your eyes when you look at them and all of those things. So their main job right now is to keep those things in check, I would say.
We're starting to implement some things with tech insights to kind of grade entities in the catalog and be able to kind of surface things about them that make it that are important. So things like if a repository for a component hasn't been touched in 6 months, we want to know that this thing's been kind of abandoned. So we're kind of bringing in some more kind of metrics that we can grab around the components to say this is a well looked after component, or this is something that's not well looked after. What we eventually do with that, I haven't quite decided yet. Whether we start deleting things or not, I don't really know.
Yeah, so when I started, there was very rigid control of what to let in. So I went on the other end of the pendulum. I let anything in, because in a way I hated that Backstage was empty. So we're early on the adoption journey, right? And in order, I'd rather not set the guidelines too early, because why would we regulate until we know what to regulate, right? But we have talked about ownership model quite early. We have a centralized, so we have the last say, and we aim to own the front end parts eventually, so we can control the front end, because we own the responsibility both of the code quality eventually, because things needs to work, but we also eventually own the user experience. So that's where we're heading, to be more developer experience focused. How can we make sure that it's useful? And I'd rather go for the data-driven decision, but it's hard when you don't have the data, right? So that's why I'm allowing anyone to dump the data in, and then we can. So we're probably going to go for some soft kind of governance, maybe like the TSG format, something like that, like a forum, because I don't want to be the do or die person for this, because it's eventually going to be what is useful for the users. So I'd rather have a council on that than the final authority. I still kind of have it, because we do own the code, right? But I don't evoke it too much. I'd rather have too much than too little, right? Because I want people to feel inspired by things they see. I want them to feel like I could do this but better, and then you can contribute by doing a PR, right? But I might change the next year when you ask me, because we're going to be the dumping ground, maybe.
I think a good tool to use here is to have an opinion about how you implement the system model and the ownership model, and let that guide what kind of governance you want on contributions. We didn't have that in the beginning. It became a little bit of a dumping ground, because if you don't have an opinion about how you're thinking about if you require systems for everything or not, it's hard to say what should govern going in. But I think those two are good tools for that. And through that, create both the governance side of it for ownership, but also that you, through how you use the system model, actually get value out of it with functionality tied to it.
For the things that we have that aren't sort of directly impacting the uptime of Backstage, like templates, like components and so on, we're trying to bring in more sort of usage metrics, for example, and likes and things like that. So our own internal community can sort of guide what works and what doesn't there. And you can also see there sort of, has this template been used a lot already, and things like that. And also, when it comes to the repos, we also post how many contributors are there outside of the core team for this thing. How spread is it in the organization?
Yeah, now one more thing when you say that. Differentiate between what is community content and what is actually production-ready or supported content, because that can also be a very good guide to what it means to actually own something that is contributed through Backstage, but is also supported all the way, versus experimenting with the community software in Backstage.
Yeah, since we don't have so much time left, let's make this the last question. What metrics do you track to evaluate the success of Backstage in your organization? Scott?
Yeah, this is a topic that we're really picking up in Philips right now. We've had Google Analytics right from the start, so one of the things that we're really keen on is seeing people come back and seeing how much time they spend on particular pages, and seeing that they're actually getting some use of it. So that's been something that we've tracked adoption with, by seeing how many monthly active users do we have, which pages do they prefer, how long do they stay on these pages. And now we're kind of transitioning away from kind of driving adoption into proving to the business that this is actually worth it. So we're now looking at things like which templates are used, how much time do they save, how much is this going to save the business, and how much can we invest in it. So we've kind of gone from, our core thing is get people using Backstage. Now they're using it. How do we drive value out of that?
Similar to what you're saying, Scott, on adoption, we're using Google Analytics to track daily usage, monthly usage, but we're also tracking the value stream through Backstage. What I mentioned earlier, getting a service up and running with a DB with all the batteries included took this amount of time. Now it's taking this amount of time. How can we get it better? So that's an important metric, and really trying to build those end user journeys.
Nice.
Yeah. We are also looking at sort of weekly active users, daily active users, and things like that. But what I prefer mainly is to look at how much time did we save with the various features there, and trying to estimate that and actually put some money there rather than weekly active users, because they keep coming back. It could be for things that really don't save us that much time and money. So I kind of like keeping track of, whatever way we can, how much time did we actually save by using these things.
Yeah, thank you very much for great questions. And as we approach the end of our session, I would like to conclude this session. We discussed how large enterprises can adapt and thrive with modern developer portals like Backstage. Hope you all learned something insightful and enjoyed this as much as I did. Let us know what your takeaways are, or anything that you enjoyed and you can share with us. We would also like to ask you all for sharing your insights on Backstage from the Q&A on the next slide. And now I would like to take a moment to thank our panelists for sharing their experiences and insights. And of course, thank you all for joining us today.